Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In this video, I am going to talk about the Old English literature, major writers and major works. First of all, we need to understand that in Old English literature, poetry was more prominent, not prose, though prose started. We will divide poetry into three kinds: heroic poetry, lyric poetry and Christian poetry. First, we will look at heroic poetry. The most famous heroic poetry is Beowulf. It was a story people told each other between 8th and 11th century in England. It was finally written down. The story takes place around 6th century. The author is still unknown. Beowulf is an epic poem. This is a very long piece of poetry. It focuses on an epic fight between the forces of good and evil. Beowulf is an amazing heroic warrior. The story is about the great adventure. Beowulf is from southern Sweden and went to Denmark to help the king Rodger of Danes. He fights on behalf of his people, but he also wants to be famous. Through the course of his journey, he fights three epic battles. The first against Grendel, a monster who attacks the king of the Danes, Rodger. Beowulf kills him. This makes Grendel's mother angry and came to take revenge and leads Beowulf to his next battle. Beowulf fights her in her underwater lair and after a struggle successfully kills her. Then third and final battle is after 50 years later, when Beowulf is king. This time one of his slaves stole a goblet from a dragon and Beowulf defeats the dragon who troubles people of his country. In the end, Beowulf dies but is remembered as the world's greatest warrior. In this poem, a monster Grendel is a descendant of Cain. Cain, the son of Adam and Eve, killed his brother Abel. Grendel can be seen an allegory of evil. Grendel's mother is an allegory for the sin. When Eve first convinced Adam to betray God by defeating her, Beowulf is overcoming sin. Last is the dragon. The dragon is an allegory for the Saturn. Second important heroic poetry is Waldear. This poetry is about Walter of Aquitaine. Walter of Aquitaine means it is a post like a king, high post. It is a lost epic poem discovered in 1860. It is the story of Walter and Hildegard who fall in love and steal treasure from the court Attila, king of Burgundians, who was after Walter and Hildegard treasure. Poem basically is about the conflict that is to take place between the two parties. Third important heroic poetry is Fight at Finnsburg. Is a poem about a fight in which Hanif and his 60 retainers besieged at Finn's fort and attempt to hold off their attackers. Fourth important heroic poetry is Widsith. In this poem, the poet talks about all the peoples, heroes who have existed in the Europe during the heroic age. Next, we will move on to the lyric poetry. First important lyric poetry is Wanderer. It has 115 lines of alliterative verse. The author is still unknown. The story is about an old man who talks about an attack which happened in his youth where his close friends and family members were killed. Memory was remained with him all his life. The wise man encourages that people should resolve matter peacefully because many people died in the battle, he says according to his experience. Second most important lyric poetry is Seafarer. It has been translated multiple times and most notably by American poet Ezra Pound. Seafarer is a person who goes on voyage on sea. He describes the hardships of life on the wintry sea. He describes the feeling solitude of the sea voyage in contrast to life on land, where men are surrounded by kinsmen, free from dangers and full of food and wine. Third most important lyric poetry is Dior Laments. Dior is a singer in Lord's Hall, lost his Lord's favor, he was banished away. Later, and he is very sad and he complains. Later, he comforts himself by seeing other people's sorrow of the world. Now we will move on to the Christian poetry. In this we have three major writers. First is Caedmon. He is a young shepherd who was not able to sing, but one night God tells him sing of his creation. Then he is called as a first English poet. His poem like Caedmon hymn is about the god. He is also called as Anglo-Saxon Milton because Milton wrote on God and also Caedmon wrote on God. Next important poet is Bede, Bede, Bede. He wrote Ecclesiastical History of the English People, which talks about the early Anglo-Saxon England, and it was written in Latin. Later it translated into Old English by King Alfred. Now who is King Alfred we'll get to know later. He also talks about the life of Caedmon and how he started to compose poems. Last important poet is Cynewulf. He is famous for his religious poems. His works like Christ, Juliana, The Fates of the Apostles, and Eleni, all his poems were signed by him. One important Christian poetry is Dream of the Rood, R-O-O-D, Rood. Now, in this poem, narrator is having a dream. He is speaking to the cross on which Jesus Christ died. The poem is divided into 3 separate sections. He talks about the vision of the cross. Then the cross shares the accounts of where the Jesus' death. Then the cross speaks that after Jesus' death, I was atoned with gold and silver, and I was honored above all trees. Then the author gives the reflection about his vision which he had about the cross. Later, after he wakes up, next morning, he praises to God. Now we will move on to the prose. Old English literature prose. As we all know, prose did not develop before Christianity came in England. Anglo-Saxon prose mostly developed by King Alfred. King Alfred encouraged education. He ruled England around 800 AD and he made many changes in a legal way. He started Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. It is a book that he used to publish every year. In this book, he talked about Anglo-Saxon history. He encouraged education should be taught in English rather than Latin. He translated several books, published Latin to Old English, and continued publishing for 300 years. He mainly contributed Anglo-Saxon prose development. So with this we end this video. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, you can write it in the comment box below, and do subscribe to my channel and share with other literature aspirants. Stay tuned with English Literature with Iram. See you soon with my another video.